A girl disappeared behind a bookcase for 761 days. When the door finally opened, she was gone. But on the floor, strangers found the one thing the war failed to destroy: her voice. "Hello, my friend. Welcome back to English Mindwave." A 13-year-old girl once sat in the darkness of World War II, holding a small diary with a red and white checkered cover. At first, it was only a birthday gift, a simple notebook, a private place for a young girl's thoughts. But within a few weeks, that little book would become something far more powerful. It would become the voice of a child hiding from a world that had decided she should not exist. Her name was Anne Frank. Behind a narrow window in Amsterdam, Anne would write while footsteps moved below her, while walls seemed to breathe with fear, while every small sound could mean discovery. Outside, governments, armies, borders, and laws were changing the fate of millions. Inside, one girl kept writing, as if words could protect the last piece of her freedom. Anne Frank's story is not just about a diary. It is about what happens when politics enters a child's bedroom. It is about how hatred can begin with speeches, then become rules, then become silence, then become a locked door behind a moving bookcase. How did a peaceful family, once living a normal life in Amsterdam, end up hidden for 761 days? How did a girl who dreamed of writing, laughing, learning, and growing older become one of the most remembered voices of the 20th century? Anne did not survive the war, but her words did. And that is the mystery that still pulls the world back to her diary. How one small voice written in fear became louder than the darkness that tried to erase it. The small diary did not appear from nowhere. Before it became a voice of memory, Anne Frank had been a child in a family trying to outrun a shadow that kept growing across Europe. Anne's full name was Anneliese Marie Frank. She was born on June 12, 1929, in Frankfurt, Germany, into a Jewish family that once believed ordinary life could continue. Her father, Otto Frank, was a businessman with a careful mind and a quiet sense of responsibility. Her mother, Edith, held the family together in the private spaces of home. Her older sister, Margot, was serious, intelligent, and disciplined. Anne was different, lively, restless, curious, the kind of child who seemed to meet the world with questions before the world could answer. For a time, their life looked peaceful. Neighbors lived near one another, children played. Families shared streets, schools, and small daily routines. But in 1933, Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany, and politics stopped being something distant. It began entering homes, businesses, classrooms, and conversations. This is where Anne Frank's life becomes more than biography. It becomes a warning about how quickly a government's ideology can change the meaning of ordinary life. A child does not need to understand every speech to feel fear in her parents' silence. Otto Frank saw the danger early. Staying in Germany meant waiting inside a storm. So he left for the Netherlands and built a new beginning in Amsterdam, opening a branch of Opekta, a company connected to jam-making supplies. Soon, Edith, Margot, and Anne joined him. Amsterdam gave them hope. The girls went to school. They learned Dutch. They made friends. Anne began to belong again. But history had not finished with them. In 1939, World War II began. On May 10, 1940, Nazi Germany invaded the Netherlands. Rotterdam burned. The country surrendered. And the Frank family, who had escaped once, found themselves trapped again beneath the same shadow. After the invasion, the shadow that followed the Frank family no longer stayed outside their door. It began to enter their names, their movements, their school life, and even the clothing they were forced to wear. At first, the new rules may have looked like separate restrictions. One place forbidden, one job taken away, one school closed to Jewish children, one business forced into other hands. But when those rules are placed together, they reveal something far more frightening. They were not random laws. They were steps in a system designed to push Jewish people out of public life, out of protection, and finally out of sight. Anne was still very young, but childhood does not protect anyone from the feeling of being excluded. She could no longer live as simply Anne, the bright girl with friends, lessons, jokes, and opinions. The world around her began to see a label before it saw a child. Jewish people had to register. They were banned from parks, cinemas, and many shops. Jewish children were separated from other students and sent to Jewish schools. Then came the Yellow Star, ordered in the Netherlands in 1942. It had to be worn openly, turning identity into a public mark. This is one of the most painful lessons hidden inside Anne's story. A society does not always become cruel in one sudden moment. Sometimes cruelty arrives through paperwork, signs, permissions, and silence. It teaches neighbors to look away before it teaches them to betray. Otto Frank tried every possible door. He carefully protected his company through trusted employees. He searched for escape routes to the United States and Cuba, but war, borders, and bureaucracy closed around the family. By spring 1942, he understood that survival might no longer mean leaving the country. It might mean disappearing inside it. On June 12, 1942, Anne received her red and white diary for her 13th birthday. For a brief moment, childhood returned. Then Margot received the call-up notice, and the Frank family knew the time for ordinary life was over. When Margot's call-up notice arrived, the Frank family no longer had the luxury of waiting. The hidden place Otto had prepared now became their only chance to remain alive. The Secret Annex stood behind Otto Frank's company office at 263 Prinsengracht in Amsterdam. To the outside world, it was just another building along the canal, another workplace with rooms, desks, stairs, and storage. But behind a movable bookcase, there was a concealed space that would soon hold an entire world. Not a free world, not a peaceful world. A world made of whispers, careful footsteps, closed curtains, and fear. The Frank family entered first. Later came the Van Pels family, Herman, Auguste, and their teenage son Peter. Then Fritz Pfeffer, a dentist, joined them. 8 people were now hidden together in a cramped space where privacy became rare, patience became difficult, and silence became a rule of survival. For 761 days, life continued behind that bookcase. Every morning, when workers arrived downstairs, the annex became almost breathless. No loud talking, no running water at the wrong time, no heavy footsteps, no careless movement. A dropped object could become dangerous. A cough could feel like thunder. For most people, silence means calm. For those in hiding, silence meant staying alive. The annex was not only a hiding place. It was also a small classroom, a prison, a family home, a battlefield of emotions, and a test of human endurance. Inside it, people still argued, they still studied, they still cooked, waited, listened, hoped, and grew tired of one another. Fear did not erase daily life. It pressed itself into every corner of it. Their survival depended on brave helpers who brought food, books, clothing, and news from outside. These helpers were not powerful officials or famous heroes. They were ordinary people who chose risk over indifference. In a time when betrayal could be deadly, their loyalty became a thin bridge between the hidden families and the world beyond the walls. Sometimes the people in the annex listened to Radio Orange, hoping for signs that the occupation might end. To Anne, those voices from far away must have sounded like proof that the world had not completely forgotten them. And through all of this, Anne wrote. She did not only write about fear. She wrote about ordinary things that made her feel human. Arguments in the annex, her complicated feelings toward her mother, her admiration and frustration with her father, her thoughts about Margot, and the loneliness of growing up in a room she could not leave. She wrote about Peter, about the confusion of first affection, about wanting to be understood, and about the dream of becoming a writer. Her diary was not just a record of hiding. It was the inner life of a young girl trying to stay alive inside herself, even when the outside world had taken away almost everything else. That is why the diary became so powerful. It did not turn Anne into a perfect symbol. It kept her human. She could be angry, hopeful, impatient, loving, afraid, and thoughtful. She wrote not like a statue in history, but like a girl trying to understand herself while history closed in around her. Then, on August 4, 1944, the footsteps finally came for them. Police entered the building under the command of SS officer Karl Silberbauer. Someone had given information, though the identity of that person remains uncertain. The bookcase was opened. The hidden world was exposed. The 8 people were arrested. Anne's papers were left scattered on the floor, as if they meant nothing. But after the arrest, Miepke's and other helpers gathered them and kept them safe. The annex had lost Anne, but the diary had survived. The diary survived the floor of the annex. But Anne herself was carried into the machinery of the war she had spent 2 years trying to escape. After the arrest, the 8 people from the hidden annex were taken first to Gestapo headquarters in Amsterdam, then to Westerbork, a transit camp in the Netherlands. There, the last pieces of family life began to break apart. Men and women were separated. Otto could still see Edith, Margot, and Anne at certain moments, but every meeting carried the quiet terror that it might be the last. Soon, they were forced onto the last transport from Westerbork to Auschwitz. More than 1,000 people were crowded into train cars, taken east in conditions meant to strip away comfort, dignity, and hope. When they arrived at Auschwitz-Birkenau, families were divided by selection. Otto was sent one way. Edith, Margot, and Anne were sent another. He never saw his daughters again. Later, Anne and Margot were transported to Bergen-Belsen. Edith remained at Auschwitz and died in January 1945. Bergen-Belsen was overcrowded, cold, hungry, and filled with disease. In that collapsing world, Anne met an old friend, Nanette Blitz, who later remembered her as weak, shaken, and still carrying the dream that her diary might one day become a book. Anne and Margot became ill with typhus. Margot died first. Anne died shortly after, likely in February or March 1945, only weeks before Bergen-Belsen was liberated. She was 15 years old. Of the 8 people who hid behind the bookcase, only Otto Frank survived. When Otto returned to the Netherlands, he still hoped his daughters might be alive. Then the truth reached him. His family was gone. Soon after, Miep Gies gave him Anne's diary. Reading it, Otto discovered not only his daughter's memories, but her mind, her voice, her honesty, and her dream of becoming a writer. In 1947, he helped publish that dream. Anne Frank did not survive the war, but her words did, and through them, a young girl who was denied a future became one of the clearest voices reminding humanity what hatred can destroy and what memory must never allow to disappear. Anne Frank's story does not end only in loss. It continues in the quiet power of memory. A young girl was forced into hiding, separated from the world, and denied the future she dreamed of. But in the middle of fear, she kept writing. Her diary reminds us that history is not made only by armies, leaders, or laws. It is also made by children, families, rooms, voices, and small acts of courage. Anne could not stop the war. She could not save herself or her family, but she left behind something hatred could not fully destroy: the truth of a human soul. Her words ask every generation to pay attention, before prejudice becomes policy, before silence becomes permission, and before ordinary people are pushed out of ordinary life. The lesson is simple but deep. Never ignore the humanity of another person. In daily life, this means choosing kindness when others are judged, speaking up when someone is treated unfairly, and remembering that even small words can protect dignity. What part of Anne Frank's story touched you the most? Please share your thoughts in the comments, so everyone can learn from each other's perspective. And if this story gave you something to think about, please subscribe to English Mindwave to support the channel and help create more meaningful stories like this.